It had been 2 years since Awa Sawadogo walked out of the Zongo compound with nothing but a small handbag, a few clothes, and the heavy weight of shame sitting deep inside her chest. She remembered the way the maids had laughed behind her back, the way Hadiza's mocking voice used to echo in her ears, and the way people gossiped whenever she went to buy tomatoes at the markets. Back then, she was the Errand's wife, the girl who married the wrong brother, the girl who washed clothes behind the main house while her brother-in-law's wife entertained friends in silk robes. She was the girl who bowed her head and swallowed tears whenever people called her Madam Boy's quarters. But life had a way of breaking you until you find yourself, and Awa had been broken enough to rebuild. When she left Isuf, Awa rolled up her sleeves, wiped her tears, and started from where she was. She worked tirelessly, and 2 years later, Awa's kitchen basket had grown beyond her wildest dreams. What started in a small corner of her bedroom was now a successful enterprise with a fully furnished office in Ouagadougou, 10 employees, 3 delivery riders, and distribution contracts with major supermarkets. Her spice basket had become so popular that she was invited to conferences to speak about women's entrepreneurship, and she had secured a partnership with an international NGO focused on empowering women in business. Awa's life transformed in ways she couldn't have imagined, but even with all the success, she did not carry bitterness in her heart. She didn't brag or chase revenge. She didn't even curse her past. Although sometimes, when she was alone in her office, she thought about the mansion. She thought about the mockery of the maids when she fetched buckets of water with them, and the way Hadiza used to summon her with a finger snap. Well, those memories no longer burned her. They fueled her. They were reminders of where she came from, of the walls she had climbed, of the dignity she had rebuilt, and every time she stood in front of a group of young women, teaching them how to start small businesses from home, she would smile and say, "Your beginnings may embarrass you, but if you stay consistent, your results will silence the mockery." Fanta, her mother, who was ashamed of her hustle at the beginning, was now her biggest cheerleader. She had graduated from boasting about being the in-law of a rich man to being the mother of a rich woman. Meanwhile, back in Alassane mansion, from the outside, Hadiza Zongo's life looked perfect. She was the beautiful wife of Alassane Zongo, one of the wealthiest and most respected businessmen in Ouagadougou. She had everything most women dreamt of. A big mansion with white marble floors, a wardrobe filled with luxury clothes and imported handbags, a personal driver waiting in the compound 24/7 for her, and enough money to never worry about the price of anything. But inside, Hadiza's heart was restless. People envied her because they believed she had it all, but secretly and painfully, Hadiza felt empty. She couldn't explain why, but deep down, there was a hollow space inside her chest, one that expensive perfumes, designer shoes, and weekend brunches with wealthy friends could never fill. In the early years of her marriage, Hadiza believed she was living the dream. She enjoyed the status, the admiration, and the way people treated her like royalty. But slowly, the truth began to creep in. Everything she was, everything she had, and everything she represented existed because of Alassane's name. When people invited her to events, it was because of who her husband was. When brands sent her free handbags, it was because of Alassane's influence. When she was featured in magazines under Elegant Wife of Ouagadougou, her achievements were measured by her marriage, not by her worth. One night, as she scrolled through Instagram, she saw a post from a successful young woman who had just been featured in a global business magazine. The caption read, "I built this from scratch. No inheritance, no husband's influence, just vision, sleepless nights, and God's grace." Hadiza stared at the photo for a long time. Then, almost without realizing it. She looked around her spacious, expensive bedroom and sighed, "Without Alassane, who am I?" Sometimes, when she was alone in her luxurious kitchen taking coffee, memories of Awa would sneak into her mind like ghosts she didn't invite. Awa, the shy, quiet young woman who once lived in the boys' quarters behind the mansion. Awa, the wife of her brother-in-law Isuf, who depended completely on Alassane for everything. Hadiza used to pity Awa, but it was the pity of arrogance, the kind that sits high on a balcony and looks down on someone carrying buckets of water in the sun. But now, 2 years later, she had begun hearing talks. During brunch one Saturday, one of her friends casually mentioned, "Do you remember Awa, your brother-in-law's ex-wife? She's doing big things now. My sister buys spices from her company. Apparently, she supplies major supermarkets now." The spoon in Hadiza's hand paused, but she laughed it off, pretending it didn't bother her. Awa, that's good for her. She finally found something useful to do. Well, later that night, when she lay in her soft king-sized bed, she couldn't sleep. She turned restlessly, staring at the ceiling and replaying her friend's words. Awa is doing big things. She supplies major supermarkets. Thinking of it all now, even her friends had businesses of their own which they built from scratch. Some were managing foundations, NGO projects or mentorship programs. Even the younger women in their circle were studying, learning and creating. They were becoming something. But her, she had nothing but Alassane's money. She thought about starting something, maybe a boutique, a small NGO or a skills program for women. But she had no experience, no drive and no passion. She had spent so many years living for appearances that she didn't know who she was without them. One Thursday morning, while relaxing on the balcony, she overheard the maids discussing downstairs. "I saw Awa on TV last night. She was speaking at a women's business event." The second maid exclaimed, "Yes, so they said her spice company is one of the fastest growing in Ouagadougou." Hadiza's heart skipped a beat. The maids didn't know she could hear them. The woman she once mocked was now being praised by the same people who used to laugh at her. When did everything suddenly change? That day, she decided she would wake up, pick up what dignity she had left and start doing something. Anything at all. Fortunately, it didn't take long before she got the opportunity of joining a women's cooperative project. It was a small committee of influential wives working on a government-funded program to support rural women with grants for small businesses. Her role was nothing much. She wasn't the brains behind it or the strategist. She was only there because of her husband's name, his connections, and the door his influence opened. So, she assisted mostly in running around with the paperwork. Now, Hadiza Zongo was used to walking into places and being recognized immediately. People knew her as Madame Zongo, the elegant wife of Alassane Zongo, one of Ouagadougou's wealthiest businessmen. When she stepped into restaurants, waiters rushed forward smiling politely. She had used her husband's name as a free ticket for so long, and it worked flawlessly. However, nothing prepared her for the day she walked into an office in downtown Ouagadougou and she forgot her husband's name because it was not important at that point. That morning, Hadiza left the Zongo mansion with a perfect outfit and designer handbag. She was on her way to the Regional Trade and Business Development Office to finalize the approval of a cooperative project. She rehearsed her introduction in the car. "Good morning, I am Mrs. Zongo. My team and I represent the Sahel Women's Cooperative." She expected to meet some senior official, sign papers, smile for photographs, and leave with another feather in her social cap. But life had other plans. As she entered the reception hall, a young receptionist welcomed her. "Good morning, madam. Are you here for the cooperative approval?" Hadiza smiled. "Yes, my dear." The receptionist nodded. "Second floor, last office on your right. You will meet our regional coordinator." Hadiza adjusted her handbag and walked up the stairs confidently with her head high until she opened the door. There, seated behind the desk, was Awa Sawadogo. For a moment, Hadiza thought her mind was playing tricks on her. She froze in the doorway with her hand still on the handle. Awa? The same Awa who once lived in the tiny boys' quarters behind her mansion? The same Awa she used to send to the markets to buy pepper and onions? The same Awa she mocked with her friends over brunch? Well, this wasn't the same woman. This Awa was different. She was dressed in a beautiful deep green Ankara gown with gold accents. Her natural hair was elegantly styled. Her makeup was on point and her poise was effortless. On the wall behind her was a framed certificate bearing her name, Awa Sawadogo, Regional Coordinator, Women's Trade and Development. Awa looked up and their eyes met. She stood up and smiled. "Madam Hadiza, you are welcome." She extended her hand and for a moment, Hadiza just stood there frozen but sweating. Then slowly, she took Awa's hands. Awa, I didn't know you." Awa smiled. "Yes, it's been a while. Please have a seat." Hadiza sat down carefully and folded her hands tightly on her lap, trying to compose herself. But inside, her chest was pounding like a drum. Awa sat down and opened the file on her desk. "I've reviewed your request for the cooperative approval. Everything looks in order. We just need a final signature and the processing will begin immediately." She signed the papers swiftly and slid them across the table. Hadiza stared at the document, unable to speak for a few seconds. She had walked in expecting to be the one holding influence, but here she was, sitting across from the woman she once mocked, now in a position of power. When the meeting ended, Awa stood and smiled again. "Hadiza, I am happy to see you and I'm glad we can support your project." Hadiza hesitated as her throat tightened. She wanted to say something, an apology, an explanation, anything at all, but the words refused to come out. Instead, she simply nodded and muttered, "Thank you." Awa nodded. "It's fine." Hadiza walked out of the office slowly. She barely even noticed the receptionist greeting her on the way out. She sat in her car for a long time, staring at her reflection in the rearview mirror. Her flawless makeup, her elegant jewelry, her designer bag. Suddenly, none of it felt like enough. She felt very small, but she wasn't humiliated by Awa. No, Awa had shown her nothing but grace and respect. The sting came from within. It was personal, more like guilty conscience. That night, Hadiza sat alone on the balcony of the Zongo mansion. Awa's face kept replaying in her mind. She was so calm, graceful and self-assured. This wasn't something titles or power could give. Only something as powerful as purpose can do that. Awa had found hers. And unfortunately, Hadiza hadn't. That was the night Hadiza decided she needed to find herself. She couldn't keep living like this, existing only as a big man's wife. The next morning, Hadiza sat at her dressing table, brushing her wig absent-mindedly. The mirror reflected a beautiful woman in a satin robe and diamond earrings. But she couldn't help but ask, "Who am I?" She thought about the brunches, the poolside parties, the constant designer shopping trips with her friends. Yes, she was admired. Yes, she was invited everywhere, but she was invited because of Alasan's name, not because of who she was. If her marriage ended tomorrow, if Alasan's wealth vanished tomorrow, if she had to stand alone, what would she stand on? Her chest tightened on the truth. She was nothing. She had built her entire identity on someone else's success. For the first time, Hadiza cancelled her brunch plans with her friends. When they called, she said she was tired. But the truth was, she didn't want to sit at a table where everyone compared handbags, discussed their husband's business deals, and pretended that was accomplishment. Instead, she spent the day sitting quietly on the balcony watching the city below. She saw women on motorbikes rushing to their shops, students walking with books in their hands, street vendors calling out prices, and she realized something. These people were all doing something with their lives, while she was just existing inside a golden cage. That evening, during dinner, Alassane casually mentioned that Awa had been invited to speak at an international women's empowerment summit. I saw Awa's name in the papers today. She's speaking at the Women in Leadership Conference next week. Impressive, isn't it? Hadiza paused. She forced a smile and nodded, pretending to be unbothered. Yes, very impressive. However, that night, when Alassane fell asleep, Hadiza stepped out onto the balcony and called her closest friend, Nadia. Nadia, do you ever feel like we've been living for nothing? Nadia blinked in confusion. Living for nothing? Hadiza, you live like a queen. Look at your house, your cars, your clothes. Hadiza shook her head. That's not what I mean. I mean, if they stripped away all of this, who am I? What have I built for myself? What can I even call mine? Nadia hesitated, then sighed. Honestly, I don't know. I have never thought about it like that. 2 days later, Hadiza overheard the maids gossiping again. She was in the hallway when she caught snippets of their conversation. I saw Awa on TV last night. Oh, can you imagine? She's in charge of a whole government office now. The other maid nodded excitedly. Yes, and the way she spoke, oh, it was so confident and calm, like a real leader. Imagine if Madam Hadiza had worked on something like that, instead of just shopping and attending brunches. Hadiza froze in place. The words entered deep. Not because they were insulting her, but because they were true. She walked back to her room slowly and sat on her bed staring into space. For the first time in her life, she envied Awa. Everywhere she turned to, it was Awa, Awa. But then, Hadiza realized she had nothing, not because she wasn't capable, but because she had never tried. So that night, she picked up her iPad and began researching women's empowerment programs in Ouagadougou. She read about NGOs helping women start small businesses, online courses for leadership and public speaking, and mentorship groups for personal growth. When she finally found a short online entrepreneurship program, she registered without telling Alassane or Nadia. I need to find who I am before it is too late. Now, that was the beginning of her awakening. Meanwhile, in another part of Ouagadougou, Issouf was still stubborn, still forming and still chasing shortcuts. He still believed that life would eventually turn around for him, that one day, luck would smile on him and he would finally become the big man he always dreamed of being. 2 years after Awa walked out of his life, he was still pretending to be someone he was not. When Awa left, he told everyone she was the problem, that she was too impatient, that she couldn't handle his vision, and that she wanted a soft life without understanding sacrifice. He never admitted the truth that he had failed her, failed himself, and failed to grow up. With his brother's influence, he got a job at a logistic firm with a moderate salary, but Issouf wasn't the type to reflect or learn. Nah, he was the type to bounce back into the same habits, the same clubs, the same lies, and the same borrowed designer shoes that once fooled Awa. And that was where he met Marina on a Friday night at Skyline Lounge, one of the Ouagadougou's trendiest rooftop bars, where young elites gathered to show off. Issouf was there in a borrowed blazer, holding a glass of overpriced whiskey he couldn't afford, and laughing loudly at jokes he didn't find funny. When she walked in, Marina Diallo, she was tall, elegant with perfectly styled braids, red lips, and an expensive aura that spoke without words. She sat at a corner table with 2 friends, ordered champagne, and didn't even glance at the men around her. Issouf couldn't resist her. He walked up to her and introduced himself using his usual charm, telling her about his business ventures and projects abroad. To his surprise, Marina seemed impressed, or at least she pretended to be. She smiled, leaned in slightly, and asked him about his investments. By the end of the night, they exchanged numbers and Isuf walked out of Skyline Lounge feeling like the universe had finally given him another chance. However, Marina wasn't aware. She wasn't naive or patient, and she definitely wasn't loyal. From the start, Marina knew exactly who Isuf was. He was a man desperate to look rich, desperate to impress, and desperate to feel important, and she used it to her advantage. She didn't ask for much at first. She started small with, "Babe, I found this lovely perfume today. It's only 75,000 CFA. I really like it." Isuf nodded eagerly. "Say no more, baby. I will send it to you tonight." Then it graduated to weekend getaways and then the small urgent business loans she promised to repay. He started using all of his salary, borrowing from friends and even taking loans from fast money lenders. Isuf didn't mind. He believed Marina was worth the investment. She was classy, stylish, and she made him feel like the big man he always wanted to be. 3 months into their relationship, Marina convinced Isuf to invest in a supposed import business. She convinced him sweetly, "Baby, listen to me. My friend in Dakar is bringing in a container of designer handbags. If we invest now, we'll triple our money in 1 month. I am already putting in 500,000 CFA myself. You only need to add 600,000 CFA." Isuf didn't have 600,000 CFA and he didn't even have 200,000, but he couldn't admit that, not when Marina believed he was a successful businessman. So he borrowed from a microfinance company, promising himself that he would repay the loan after the big deal matured. He transferred the money to Marina with confidence, feeling like a partner in something big. Unfortunately, 2 weeks later, Marina went silent. She stopped returning his calls, stopped replying his texts, and when Isuf visited her apartment, the neighbor said she had moved out suddenly. That was when it hit him. He had been played. Well, the lenders didn't care about Marina or any excuse. They wanted their money back. By the 4th week, 2 angry debt collectors showed up at Isuf's office, shouting his name so loudly and furiously that his colleagues stared in shock. "You think we are playing with you? Bring our 450,000 CFA today or we will drag you to the police." His boss, who was embarrassed by the scene, called him into the office and warned him that if he brought street drama into the workplace again, his contract would be terminated. Isuf was lost and desperate. He tried reaching Marina through social media, only to find out that she had blocked him everywhere. That was when he started hearing gossips from people. "Isuf, you didn't know? Marina has been dating a senator. She bought a brand new car last week. Bro, she used you. You were just one of her ATM machines." And then 2 weeks later, the inevitable happened. Isuf was arrested for failing to pay back the loan. The police paraded him out of his office and the photos leaked online, spreading across WhatsApp groups like kerosene. Isuf sat in cell one day, nursing his bruised ego and shattered pride, when an officer came to inform him that one of the lenders wanted to reach a payment agreement with him. As he walked down the hallway to the waiting room, he looked up at the central television and froze. The TV was showing the Sahel Women in Leadership Conference, which was the biggest event of the year for female entrepreneurs, innovators, and community leaders in Burkina Faso. And his ex-wife, Awa, was the keynote speaker in a hall filled with business owners, farmers, students, CEOs, and NGO leaders. She walked to the podium confidently, dressed in a fitted sky blue Ankara gown, held the microphone and began. 2 years ago, I walked out of a compound with nothing but a small handbag and a broken heart. I had no money, no job, no car, and no confidence left. But I had a choice. I could remain in my shame or I could rise. And I chose to rise. Isuf swallowed hard and tried to catch his breath. Awa continued. I started Awa's kitchen baskets with only 30,000 CFA, selling spices from my bedroom. But today, we supply over 20 supermarkets, employ 10 women, and partner with NGOs across West Africa to train rural families on sustainable food packaging. But this journey is not about my success. It is about ownership. Owning your purpose, your identity, and your dignity. We women must learn something crucial. Our worth is not tied to anyone's name, anyone's wealth, or anyone's validation. If life takes everything away tomorrow, what remains is what you built. So, build something no one can take from you. The applause that followed was thunderous, and Isuf bent his head in shame and walked away. Now, among the audience at the conference was Hadiza Zongo. She was dressed in a brown bubu that made her appearance less flashy and less performative. She no longer tried to outshine everyone in the room. Instead, she listened and took notes like a student eager to learn. It had been almost 2 years since that day at the regional trade office when she walked into Awa's world and left shaking. When the conference ended and the crowd reduced, Hadiza walked forward. Awa turned and smiled. Hadiza, you came. Hadiza nodded. I wanted to thank you, not just for helping me at the office that day, but for showing me something I didn't even know I lacked. You woke me up. Awa smiled and embraced her. You woke yourself up, Hadiza. I only reminded you of what was already inside you. For Awa, life wasn't about victory over anyone. It wasn't about revenge, and it wasn't also about proving anything. It was about becoming whole, and she could boldly say that life had indeed come full circle for her. Hi besties, thank you for watching till the end. This story is a very personal one for me because I am an ardent preacher of purpose, especially to my fellow women. We saw the way Awa started on the wrong foot, and we also followed her journey to purpose. We saw how her life became a mirror to Hadiza, who thought she had it all. Now, that is how our lives too can become mirrors to others when we decide to live out our purpose. So, I ask you the same question Hadiza asked Nadia. If you are stripped away of all external influence, who are you? What have you built for yourself? What can you call yours? While you reflect on this, I want you to remember that it is never too late to discover yourself and start living purposely. True value is not in the things we have, but in who we are and what we do with our life. Kindly share the story out with your loved ones. Give the story a thumbs up and subscribe to this channel if you've not done so by now. Until I bring another story your way. Bye!